Hey everybody out there, it's Pastor John. I'm going to respond to another one of these Stump the Pastor questions, which was another really good one that I didn't get to respond to on that particular Sunday. And this particular question is baptism. Is being baptized as a baby good enough? That's a good question. And I think there's a lot of questions surrounding baptism and how do we practice it. Um, for those of you who don't know, I am someone who prefers what we call believer's baptism. So I think that believer's baptism, which means that baptism is done when someone can express their faith and desires to be baptized. Um, that's in contrast to infant baptism, where the person is an infant and doesn't. It's not their choice; it's the choice of someone else to have them baptized. Now, just a quick summary of why both of those are views. One, for infant baptism, that people are saying, well, look, the grace of God isn't earned. We want to welcome people into that grace. And there's something mystical that happens in baptism where God is claiming us. It's God's work. And when we baptize infants, it is so clearly God's work and not the work of the infant. And so they say we want to immerse them into that life as soon as possible, and into the covenant community that God claims them, shows they are claimed by grace, not for anything they did, even any decision they've made, but just because God is gracious. Whereas a believer's Baptist would say, baptism advocate would say, um, you know, we really think that baptism is the coming together of God and the person. It's a covenant. It's a two-way covenant where God says, "Yes, you are loved, and I extend grace to you apart from any works you can do." But the person also needs to say, "I accept it. I repent. I turn towards God, and I want to follow Christ." So that's the difference in the views. Now, that's a really simple version of the views, I should say. So is the question here is being baptized as a baby good enough? Well, let me tell you my story. I was baptized when I was 5, but it was practically an infant baptism because it wasn't my decision. My mom wanted my brother and I baptized, so he was 1, I was 5. We were both baptized. Um, so I was basically baptized as an infant, or I fit that infant baptism category. And when I was in college, that's when I really started to go deeper into my faith, to understand the gospel on a deeper level, and to really turn my life over to Jesus. And the same is true actually for Lauren, my wife. She was actually baptized as an infant when she doesn't remember it at all. But both of us went through the process of questioning, should I be baptized again? Um, and both of us decided no. So I guess in answer to the question, is being baptized as a baby good enough? I guess our answer was yes. What we both decided is that we claimed that baptism as our own. We didn't need to jump through. Baptism is jumping through like a hoop that we had to do again, and that's where I really want to come down on this question. I think when we talk about sacraments, when we talk about baptism, the question "what is good enough" is not really the question that we want to be asking. That's kind of a minimum standard, whereas the question I want to ask when it comes to baptism is, how is baptism most powerful? Like, how does it most powerfully communicate its meaning? Because it's a symbol. Symbols are meant to communicate some sort of meaning. To me, again, I prefer baptism because I think, or I prefer believer's baptism because I think that believer's baptism, and even ultimately, I would even prefer um, immersion baptism, because I think that most fully communicates the symbol of dying and rising with Christ, putting off the old self and putting on the new self. So that's my preference because I think it communicates best what baptism is all about. And secondly, baptism is a formative symbol, so it's supposed to teach us something. And so I think if we can remember it, it teaches us better. Whatever lessons we're to learn from baptism. So, um, I want to be asking the question: how do we get the most out of baptism? Why did God give us this symbol? What is it communicating? And look at it more like that and less like it's this obligation I have to do. It's this box I have to check off. So if you were baptized as an infant and you're questioning, do I need to be baptized again? I would say try not to think of it as a do I need to, as much as a is God calling me to this? Is this something that I think is really important for my faith and for the community, for the church? Um, Paul says in 1 Corinthians a couple times, everything is permissible, but not all is beneficial. So we're not just asking a question of permission or can or can't. We're asking questions of what is beneficial, what is helping us, what is growing us in the faith. So that's really your decision. Um, your and God's decision ultimately. I mean, really, that you prayerfully contemplate, God, what are you calling me to do? What would be the point of getting baptized again? What is the point of baptism? And how is that communicating both to me and to the community? Um, in the powerful ways that baptism is meant to communicate. So that's my initial response. I have preached on baptism a couple times, so you can go to the website and find those messages as well. But there you go. Second Stump the Pastor mini response.